Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Popo and we are Popo. So in this video, we are going to be taking a look on how to create this tile frame from start to finish using Blender and in After Effects. The goal is to actually have a camera that just moves slowly while some effects or some title just pass by. It's not to have a drastic movement, a drastic transition, but really slowly to just convey the story of the intro. It is also worth mentioning before we start that you might have noticed that recently on my videos and tutorials, I don't really spend too much time talking about the animation because that is something that can be found all around. But the one thing that I really focus on, especially that as I go through my career and experience, I get more and more interested into the storytelling, into the art direction, into the why do we do things this way and how do we solve this issue. So it's more about problem solving in these tutorials rather than, oh, how to exactly get this animation. Animation is pretty much straightforward, but getting the idea, I think that's what's really important, and that's what I try to focus on recently. So here we are inside of Blender, and the first thing we're going to do, we'll try to create a plane and then we'll explain how displacement actually works in here. So I'm just going to go Shift A and mesh plane. I'm going to create a plane. Cool. Doesn't matter for now the size. And I'm going to go and see how many subdivision it has. And obviously it doesn't really have any. I mean, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, but then that's it. In order to have displacements, in order to have all those edges here, as you can see here, all these details, we must have subdivisions. We must have something to have mountains in. But right now the mountains don't have many subdivisions to work on. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go inside of edit mode. All right. Or you just press the tab and then I'll be able to see the vertices, I'll see the edges and everything and faces. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to press A, or I'm just going to select everything. So press A and then I'm just going to right click, subdivide. And then I'll be able here to subdivide this as much as possible. I'm going to press OK, and then I'm going to press again, subdivide. I'm going to do this for a bunch of time until I really get a very strong mesh, something like this. But I feel like we can still actually subdivide this just a little bit more. And I think that would make it cool. So it's pretty dense. So this is pretty much what we're looking for. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to get out. And then if I look at this, I'll see that I have a lot of subdivisions. So this is pretty dense surface. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and just for the sake of explaining, I'm going to go open the shader mode. I'm going to go here. I'm going to make sure that I am not on Eevee, but on cycles, just so that I can see my displacements. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a material, and it could be just a test, or it could be the material that we want to try. And so what I'm going to do here, just for the sake of explaining, I'm going to create a noise texture. Cool. And so if we look at the noise texture, I need to go here. This is what a noise texture is. It's basically just as it explains, it's a noise. But I want a way to tell Blender that, hey, I want every single white area to go up and every single black area, darker areas, to, just stay on their place or go down. And so to do that, I'm just gonna play with this a little bit. Cool. And to do that, what I need to do, let's get back where we started. So we have a noise texture, and to do that we need to displace it. So I'm just gonna go and create a displacement, put this into the height, and then I'm gonna put displacement here. Now we can see we have these details, so I'm just gonna go and create a light just so that we can actually see what's going on. I'm just gonna create a point light, and then I'm just gonna go and put it up a little bit like this. So you can see that with the light, we'll just increase the light. See, we have these tessellations, but then when we look at the geometry, it's not really, it's actually still flat. So if we look at it from this way, it works. It's the trick works, but we don't see any deformation. And so to do that, I basically need to go inside the texture tab and make sure I go all the way down where I see displacement. Okay. And then I'm going to go to settings, and then I'll make sure that this is displacement and bump. The moment I do that, you will see that actually now my displacement is not only a trick, but it's actually real. And if I play with, for example, the mid-levels, what they do is they'll just make sure that your surface doesn't move up and down. And so if I put, for example, 0.5, you'll see that it moves down. But when I put it 0, it just stays up. But then we're just scaling this as we go. All right, so this is how displacement works. And now, obviously, so just go a little bit like this. Obviously, if I go and try to play a little bit with the scale, you will see that depending on how I play with the scale, this is what's going to happen. And at the end, all in all, the lesson to learn from this is that whatever is, as you can see here, whatever is white goes up whatever is dark goes down. And to really demonstrate a little bit better, I'm just going to do this color ramp just to make sure the blacks are blacks and the white are white. You'll see this here. And so the black parts are down, the white parts are up. Cool. So that's how displacement works inside of Blender. Now, what we're going to do for the case of our tutorial, we need to create this terrain map. All right, here we are inside of After Effects, and this is where we're going to create our terrain. So in the description, a link where you can actually download a lot of terrains, really 4K, and they are for free. So please download the ones that you feel like you want to use, and let's get started. So to actually make this a little bit more personalized, what I do is I bring in this texture, and then I'll bring in this texture in here. So if we look at this texture, which is really beautiful because I could put my mark here and then that's it. But then it would be more interesting to have a little bit more details here because it's so open here. All right, so I could add a little bit more detail, a little bit more stuff into it. So I could add this kind of mountain going on here. So I'm just gonna go and do a screen and just remove the edges like this, and I'm just gonna subtract and make sure I feather this so that it's not that sharp. Okay, and let's just feather a bit. Cool. So that's how it goes. And then if you want to add more details, you can add more of the terrains and you can edit this as much as you want. And then when you're ready, you can just go composition, save frame as, and then you'll be able to render this as an image. Now, once you render this as an image, once you're ready with the kind of terrain you want to go, let's jump back into Blender. All right, now we're back inside of Blender, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to test that image that we just created. So I'm just going to go and Shift A, search for image texture, go grab my image texture. All right, we just created inside of After Effects, and then to test the displacement, all I need to do is call in for displacement. I'm going to put it here, put this one to the height values, and put it this one here. All right, we're already seeing some pretty beautiful landscapes. That's good. Cool. We're seeing some details. If you need more details and you don't want to go and subdivide that a little bit more, all you could do is just go back here and try to do some subdivision of the surface, and that will add just a little bit more. And you could just go to 2, for example, and then that would add a lot more subdivision. But the more you go, the higher it gets to actually render all this. Just keep that in mind. So I'm just going to go and turn this off. Maybe I'll need it later on, but not now. Cool. I'm just gonna go and try to raise this up a bit, okay, so that you guys can see, and then I can just make this a little bit higher, whatever I feel like going. So I'm just gonna do something like this. All right, and then I could put my mark in here. Cool. All right, now that we're done with our displacement, what I could do next is just try to find, just take some time and try to find a better angle view. So for me, what I'd like to do, one of the things that I could suggest, Control-Alt-0 to make sure that the camera sticks onto where I am. Make sure that this is turned on. Cool. And then what I would do, I will just try to find something that is really up to where I want this whole scene to happen. So let's just say that it's going to be something like this. So something from the top, but not too top, just a little bit tilted, for example. And then what I could do, then just make sure that this is 50 is a little bit too wide. So I'm just going to go for something very, very, very close. It's just like we are in someone's desk or microscopic kind of view to make sure we get really into the depth of it. All right. This sounds a little bit okay. I think this is cool. So once you're very happy with something that you see, you can just lock the camera so that if you try to go around the scene, it's going to be okay. Or if you want to animate this for now, what you could do, since I'm not going to animate, I can just show you what you could do. You can go into timeline, make sure how much you want. So for example, 250 is a little bit too much, but let's just keep it that way. We're going to say that we're going to start from here, and the rotation is as well. And then by the end of a few seconds, let's just say 100. So we can just put this into 100. So in 100, I'm just going to move a little bit towards this side, and then I'll just make sure that the keyframes are back again, and then I'll have this little slow animation happening. Cool. And if I need a little bit more, I could just drag this a little bit more, and then it's going to be so slow, and then the animation of the text could happen, the animation of the astral could happen as well. All right, so try to find the view that you want, and once you're happy with it, let's continue. All right, so I found my view that I'm very happy with. Just to mention, there's a few things that are changed here. One, I framed this, and to frame something, it's pretty simple. You just Shift A, and you just write frame. You put your frame, and for example, let's just say you create an image texture. And let's just say later on when we work on this, you want to create something for, let's just say, the astral. You can just go here and say astral, and then now this will be an astral, and anything that you add after this, anything that you add will actually just go cool. So this is when it comes to frames. And another thing that I did, so you'll see that I have a lot of more details in here, and the reason why I got these details and you probably don't have is just because you don't have more subdivisions. And so since this computer can kind of handle it, so I went all the way to 6, and again, and I went and I added 2 more. Cool. So now that we have this, let's discuss a little bit about lighting this. All right, so to light this, I'm gonna create a sun because it's a pretty huge platform and I wanna really mimic the sunlight in here. So I'm gonna go and create Shift A and create a sunlight. I'm gonna go out of this, and this is where my camera kind of is. Now I'm just gonna go and get this sunlight a little bit here, just get the gizmo so that I can know what I'm looking at. And I'm just gonna go and put this a little bit like that, so you can see that we're getting these really beautiful shadows. But one thing that I need to be very, very wary of is how strong these shadows are, and then of course you can add more into this, but yeah. And so I'm just gonna go and try to put this a little bit up, not too much. I think just this way is pretty good. So it would be good if everything was pointing to the actual astral when we put it here. Cool. So I think I'm pretty okay with this. And if you're okay with this, remember you can always change how this looks like in here, or you could just play with the colors. So just see it to your heart content, and when you're happy, let's continue with the tutorial. All right, now that we have all this set up, let's start creating a little bit of those astral bumps, shall we? So that we have a little idea of what do we have here. So for that, I'm gonna use again image texture, put it here, and I'm gonna go and call in my image texture, which is this astral projection right here. If you don't have these textures, you can actually just get them on my Gumroad, or you can just get it on my Patreon and you'll be able to get all the project files. Why not? So just check the Patreon on the link below. Now, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go create this, and I'm gonna make sure that I have everything in a frame so that I know what I'm doing later on, because this project is gonna get a little bit too ahead of its place. So I'm gonna call this astral bump, and what we want to create that astral carving right there, and there is no better way than doing it with a bump. So I'm just gonna go call in for a bump, put it inside, and I'm just gonna link this into the height, and in the same time take the normal into the normals. Now I should be able to see it somewhere once the computer has finished calculating it. All right, so I see it here in the middle, but it's not really where I want it to. And to be able to control where this astral is, all I need to do is actually go to here and do Control T. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna create this node combo. And if you don't have this, please make sure you go into Edit, Preferences, and you activate the Node Wrangler. Cool. And now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use the UV coordinates of this picture to move it alongside this. So I'm just gonna go to something like 0.2. Just gonna put it somewhere there. All right. And then I could just keep taking this into a little bit smaller, I would say. Cool. And so what's gonna happen is now our carving is inside of that thing. So if this is really good for you, then you're happy. You can just continue with the tutorial. If this is too much for you, for example, for me, this is a little bit too much. It's carving way too much considering the distance of this and the scale of this terrain. And so to make things a little bit, just because I don't want this to be really, really up there, so I'm just gonna go deactivate this just so that I can just work faster with this. So I'm just gonna put like 0.25, and then I'm gonna look how it goes. So I think this is a little bit all right, because the other one was very heavy and I wasn't really happy with it. Cool. So once you're happy with your result, let's continue with creating the gold texture. All right, to learn how to create a realistic gold shader that you can use in every single project, in every single object, procedural gold shader, we're gonna go to the shader here. So it's going to be a little bit bright because we don't have an HDRI Studio, but we'll do that later. So for now, let's learn how to create a gold shader, shall we? So I'm going to disconnect this. So Control right click, and I'm just going to go and create a new principle. All right, it's really good to principle because it has everything. And then I'm just going to go and connect these two. So this one will just be a gold shader. So for now, it's as a very normal shader. And we know that gold is very reflective. So the first thing I'm going to do is go all the way into reflective. Okay, cool. So I don't need subsurface, so I'm just gonna turn it off just to make sure this. And to get a better gold reflection algorithm, I'm just gonna go to Christensen Burley. Cool. Now, how do we start? Well, let's start with some colors, all right? So first we want to know what we're looking at. So I'm just gonna go to color ramp, make this into the base color, and I'm gonna click here, go to the hex value. I'm just gonna paste in this color. So please make sure you paste in this exact color, and then you'll get this gold. So already up to a good start, but we know that gold is not really all shiny like this, and it has a little bit of roughness. So we want to get that roughness, that bump, those details inside of a gold shader. And so to do that, to add more noises and more details, which is noise, so I'm just going to go and call in a noise texture. Cool. And just like we did before, we want to be able to control the mapping of this noise. So I'm just going to go press Control T, and again, edit preferences and make sure you have your add-on Node Wrangler. And so Control T, you will get this. Okay, so first I don't want to look at the generator. I want to look at the object values so that I can generate the noise. And then I'm going to take this noise, let's just put it in the FAQ, and then I'll be able to see my noise right here. Cool. All right, so far this is what we're looking at. So we'll have the noise right here. So let's control a little bit the noise so that we can play with it. So I'm just going to put not too much. I'm going to go and increase the detail, and I'm going to increase a little bit the roughness just a bit. Cool. And now that I have this, let's start creating a bit of those bumps. So to create a bump, obviously what I need to do is actually create a bump. So I'm gonna go and call in the bump, put this one in here, and then I'm just gonna go and put this in the height. Cool. So now I see a little bit of this going on, and so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go and create a ramp just so that we can actually control how rough this is, because it's not gonna be all over. We just want to have it in some places, and so some places means that we're gonna need to control the whites and the blacks. So we're gonna push this white thing a little bit closer somewhere here, so we have a little bit here. Cool. All right, now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go and basically just duplicate, and I'm just gonna put this one here. Cool. And then I'm gonna call in another bump. So bump, and we're gonna add details into the detail. So we're just gonna go and put more details into this. So now we have even more texture, but this one, I think we can just add a little bit more detail like this. Okay, cool. So then we have that, and I think that's a little bit too much, so we're just gonna turn it down a bit. Cool. So now we have this beautiful gold, but then we need to control a little bit actually the strength of this bump because it's too high, so we'll just turn it down. We just want to have this, you can see the details on the surface, so that's what we want to have. Cool. All right, so we have the main details, and then we have the small details in here, and now what we want to do, we just want to control a little bit the roughness of this entire thing. So I'm just gonna make a little less mess in here, so I'm just gonna try to add this. So again, the main noise, the main color, and then we have the noise that goes into the bump, and then we'll add more details into the bump. And so that's what we did here. Cool. Now the only thing that we need to do is do a color ramp so that we can have an automatic generation of the roughness, so that we don't have to do it ourselves. And then we'll control it with the main noise. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go zoom in first and try to get this here, so you can start seeing that darkness of gold. You see the gold is a little bit dark when you look at it in its raw form, and that's what we're trying to do here. All right, so again, this is what we have so far, a very realistic gold shader. Now let's move into the next part where we're gonna mix everything together and try to add more details. So for now, we created these mountains, we created the light, and we created this curvature inside the land. But what we need is this, you see this beautiful river that are shining in gold? So let's see how we can actually do this. All right, so here we are back in Blender. As you can see, we have this beautiful gold shader that we created, but what we want is we want to keep this very unique to the river. So let's create a river first. What I'm going to do again is create a image texture. All right, so I'm just going to put it here. Just gonna bring this back in here, and I'm gonna bring in my image texture, which is this one. So it's just an image of some river, so you can get it online, or you can create it in After Effects using advanced lighting, and you just layer layers on top, or you can just find it online. There are a lot of free assets out there. And so what I need is these rivers, as you can see here, they're a little bit too big for the scale of our mountain. And so what I need to do, I need to find a way where I could just scale this down and repeat it. And so what I'm going to do for that, I need to control the UVs. And to do that, I'm going to just Control T again with the Node Wrangler and select all this and press 6. Now I have this all along, which is pretty cool. Now all we need to do is find a way we can mix the river with the gold while having our astral bomb. And to do that, it sounds difficult, but it's not. All I need to do is have a mix shader, and then I'm just gonna put the mix shader here. Now the first thing I want to do, I want to have my astral bomb and I want to have my gold. All right, but the only way I want to see the gold is through the river. Now let's see what that's gonna look like. Okay, so I'm just gonna go straight here. Cool. So it looks like I can't see my river, and that is because my base color here is white. So I'm just gonna go and turn it black, and now you'll be able to see the rivers are actually gold. So everything is working as intended, but the only problem here is that we don't really have any source of reflection from the world. And to fix that, all I need to do is go inside the background, make sure that the color is actually black, and then we're gonna go into the world, and then we'll try to recreate beautiful shader that lightens our entire reflection and object. All right, so let's get inside our shader node, make sure we're in the object, and we're sure that we are in object here. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do here, actually I'm gonna try to go to display and make sure that this is black so that we know exactly what we're doing. Good. Now what I need to do here, just gonna go, gonna have it here, I'm gonna put the mix shader in here. Cool, so now we're gonna see it here. Now what we want the background in the back. That's good, but then we want to emit the light from a source, and the source, we're gonna use this HDRI that I already prepared, which is this one. Cool, so which is a pretty simple studio, and then I'm gonna bring in the Control T, and using Control T I can actually just rotate it however I want, but then I need to have generated not the UV. Now you will be able to see my studio around. Great, but the thing is I don't really want to see my studio all the time, so the way you can actually fix that is if you call in a light path. I'm going to put the light path in here, and I'm going to make sure that is camera ray in the factor, and now the HDR is going to disappear, but then I'll still be able to control it here. Now what I need to do, I'm going to go and try to turn this into a place where I'm happy with, something like that. All right, so that looks pretty good, and now we should have our reflection working nicely, but now we just need to control a little bit the lights so that we can get that right mood. So as you can see here, you'll be able to see that the gold is actually shining. One thing for sure, I like to do this just to control how bright my HDRI is. So I'm just going to call in an emission and put it in here. And now if I add this to, let's just say 2, that is going to be more bright than the actual. And then if I want to control the brightness, I'll just be able to control it in here. It's no longer just affected by how bright is the HDRI by default. Cool, so I think for now we are okay. Let's just go back to our camera and see how this looks like. All right, so as you can see here, the gold is really appearing. So let's just hide the grid. The gold is appearing. Everything is pretty much neat. All I need to do now is, if I wish, make this gold. This bump here, this astral logo gold. All right, so let's get into it. The first thing I'm gonna do is just take this, duplicate it, put it on top, and I wish if I actually could duplicate this entire thing in here, and then P to get it out, and then push it in here. Cool, so this is still gold, so that's pretty all right. Now I need to find a way to actually mix again the astral that we did here, this astral bump. So I'm just gonna go copy this up here. Okay, and so all I need to do now is have a mix shader where I can mix this gold with the astral. So I'm just gonna have a mix shader, and just so that you can see, I'm just gonna go and put this into, I'm gonna put this in here, and then try to make put this in here. Cool. Now I'm gonna get this in here and then put the gold in here. So as you can see, I'm having this really beautiful, I mean, this could be a beautiful render on its own. So this is now the astral that is being gold, but now we need to control it so that we can mix it with the others. And all I need to do here, I'm just gonna call in a color ramp, basically have a color ramp and make sure that this one selected is actually black, and then this color goes into. Cool. Now, what I'm gonna do, now that this is mixed, what I want to do is mix everything, mix it into one. And so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make an add shader, I'm gonna put it in here, put this one top, take this, put it in here, and then get this one out. And just like that, you will have a gold astral, as you can see, a gold river, and a beautiful mountain. And don't forget, we turned off the subdivisions. Once I turn on the subdivision, everything is gonna work like perfections. So now you are ready to render. So just make sure you turn on the subdivisions. Make sure that your max samples is exactly how you want it to be. If you want to use the denoiser, please use it. And I personally used it. I kept these as it is. Yeah, I just turned on the render. So after you finish rendering, let's get into After Effects. All right, so before we move into actually compositing this picture, and I'm sure you're excited to actually start doing some beautiful stuff, we have to do one last thing. You see this thing here? This grid. It's really important, and we're going to discuss later on why. So let's learn how to create it. So first, I'm going to make a new composition, and you could choose whatever you feel like. So 19201080. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a solid, and I'll make sure that this solid is actually white. Okay, so put it solid. I'm gonna call this point grid. Great. So now we have this point, and now what I'm gonna do, I need to find a way to actually create points. And to do that, it's very simple. So I'm just gonna go into CC ball action, and it's gonna create these balls here, but they are pretty big. So I understand that size matter also in this case. And so the ball size is really small, but the grid spacing is a little bit too big. And so that's what she said. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a little bit more here. So I'm just going to go to full. All right, there we go. So we have our grid. But as you can see here, the grid is not full, but it's actually masked nicely. And so to do that, it's very simple. I'm going to go hide that and create a new solid. And I'm going to call this fractal mask. And now all I need to do is do a fractal noise. Great. So now we are having a fractal noise, and just so that you understand what we're trying to do, let me just put this a little bit down so we can have white and black. And now that we have our grids, so we want to use this as a mask for this. And with the new After Effect, I'm just going to do an alpha matte here, but I don't see anything because I'm using alpha matte. But what I need to do is luma matte. Luma matte will look at the true black and white value, not just at the edges of the layer. And then when I do that, now I'll be able to see that. So you can see that our dots a little bit too not bright, because if you look at here, it's not really bright. So we're just going to go and increase the brightness of the bright parts. So something around here. Let me make sure that the black are actually black, something like that. Cool, and that would be it. And if you want to animate this, all you need to do is just animate the evolution, but it's not really important here. So all I need to do is actually just go and render this as an image. Again, say frame as, or you could just, if you have Video Copilot shortcut, all you could do is just take a screenshot, and that would be more than enough. All right, so back inside of Blender, all I'm gonna do, to render this, I normally just cut this, make a new image texture, keep the displacement, it's really important, and I'm just gonna put this in here. I don't see anything, so I'm just gonna go and actually look for my texture. So this is the texture we just rendered. So once I'm ready, I'll just press F12, and yeah, I'll just render this as a PNG. And if you have some questions about how did I render that mark alone, because we're going to be using it in our compositing, all I did was disconnect everything, and then I went here, and I connected just the gold mark that we created on top. Now you'll be able to see this gold mark, but this is not really what I used. What I did was, just because I have the texture from Tarascose, which you can purchase on the website, the Gumroad, I'll put the link below as well. So what you could do is I went and I removed everything I removed the gradient that was inside. And so now I'll be able to just render this. And then the same way, all I did was press F12 and I rendered this as a picture. And then as a PNG, you export it. So you just do image. We'll have to wait for it to render. So once it finishes, you just go image, save as copy, and then you'll be able to have just this as is. All right, and that concludes the Blender part. We've completed everything that we need to do in Blender. On the next video, we're going to be taking a look on how to composite all this inside of After Effects. If you cannot wait any longer and you want to access the After Effects and all the project files included, you can just go on my Patreon. I'll put the link below. And if you enjoyed the tutorial, please make sure to put a like button and subscribe and put the bell on. It really helps me a lot. These tutorials will be able to reach even more people that actually might find this useful. My name is Mr. Popo, and we are Popo. I'll catch you on the next one.